Today's the day. I'm rocking my Selena shirt. Well, it's actually my wife's. But we are definitely representing Selena today because I'm finally gonna get to do a full color portrait, and it's gonna be Selena Quintanilla. I've been a fan for a while. My wife's an even bigger fan, and it's the drawing that I made for her, but it's also a drawing that I got a chance to, give one to Chris Perez. This was the giveaway for this exact Selena portrait, you know what I mean? So super excited. It's gonna be a good day, full color. I'm gonna try my best to do maybe a voiceover or speak in the moment of what I'm doing to try to teach as much as I can. All right guys, check it out. Hey, what's up, Ink fam? Okay, so for this one, I'm using triple black dynamic. I use the triple black instead of regular black because it's a lot more pigmented, and so it just gives me a much more rich, darker black. Right here, I'm adding a little bit of water into every single one of the ink caps. This is my brown. I made a dark brown with black and then a regular brown ink cap. And this is half white, half black. So I'm making a 50% gray opaque tone. And then a white, I'm gonna make sort of like a 10% sort of gray. This is gonna be a mixing white, and this is my regular white or possibly a mixing white. That's an Empire white. This is golden yellow from Eternal. Really like that one, very peachy, more on the yellow side, very warm. And this is a pink from Radiant. I don't remember the name of the color, but it's really bright, really strong. And I mix that in with the golden yellow to create this sort of like peachy sort of color. And then I'm gonna make a very light version of that color by mixing it with white. And I know it looks a little messy, but it was hard to get that color in there. And then I mix everything. I like to create pre-mixes because it makes it easier. I don't have to keep dipping around and trying to find the color. That's regular brown with really red from Fusion. And I'm using that same brown with white to create a light brown. And then I'm using two different reds from Radiant. El Rojo red, which I like, is very scarlet, and then like a regular red. This is Tangerine from Eternal. I like this one because it looks very bright, peachy, sort of warm. And then we have a light pink from Radiant. And then I mixed that with white. I also made some other like mixing colors in the back. I didn't show that in the camera, I totally missed it. And then for the stencil, I used the new dynamic stencil stuff, and I do like it. You have to use it kind of like wet instead of tacky for it to really stick. And I'm still kind of getting used to it, but I do think it created a good stencil. You have to wait a little longer for it to dry though, because you have to kind of do it more wet to put on the stencil. Okay, here I'm starting off with my blacks. I dipped my triple black and then this sort of like maroon burgundy color that I mixed, so that way it's not a solid dark black, Just this is my deepest, darkest tone. This is the main black source that I use for the whole tattoo. I'm using a 11 curved mag, a constant pendulum motion with my Ambition Soldier tattoo machine. And I have the speed set at about 5. I don't think I changed my voltage at all during the whole tattoo. Just going back and forth patiently. This is really fast, but if you were to see the motion, it's very slow, very methodical. And since I'm wiping over some stencil area, I want to make sure I don't lose that stuff. Here I get my round shader. This is a 12 gauge 11 round shader. This is from Mast or Dragonhawk. Just finding some of those black areas, making sure that they're filled out nice and solid. And I'm using very tight, short, quick movements. That bracelet was pretty tricky to make sure that it has that metallic look. But again, if you're paying attention to just the solid black areas at first, the rest should be easier, and then you kind of go from there. You do your dark blacks and then your midtones, your dark to midtone and then your midtones, and then you start working on your light tones, and you should be able to get some of the trickier stuff every single time. And then that part of the shirt there, I wanted to make sure that I can get the little details, so I stuck with my round shader instead of using my mag. When I get to the mesh of this shirt, sort of blouse that Selena was wearing for this photo shoot, that part was tricky because I wanted to make sure that I add the texture of the mesh. And so I was kind of racking my brain trying to figure out how to create that. What I decided on was I pulled out a 15 curve mag. I dipped into my dark tone, which is that black and burgundy mixture. And I ran my machine angled. You can kind of see some of that texture right here. There it goes. I ran my machine angled out, very, very angled towards the skin, making sure that you could see the separation in needle, the markings of each needle. And then I cross-hatched that. So I went in one direction and then I cross-hatched that. And then I just kind of filled out some areas, try to make the edges a little bit darker. And it left this really cool sort of like mesh design, you know? I was really happy with the result. I think on the other sleeve, I think I wish I would have maybe used a bigger mag so that way I can get the larger area, because I ended up leaving some markings that looked, you know, to me it looked like I could see the tattoo needle instead of it looking just like the mesh would. I think on this right hand that I just tattooed, it looked a whole lot better, but I'm still very happy with the result. Here I'm using a mag, kind of creating those darker areas of the hair that's falling down in front of her blouse and under, just behind the hand, so it's in a shadow area. I'm using blacks, burgundies, dark grays, mixing into them, so that way it's not just solid black hair. Because in real life, if somebody has dark hair, yes, you see some black areas, but then you see bouncing light, which creates grays, which creates light browns. And so that's what I'm trying to achieve. As I was wiping, I started noticing that I was losing some of the stencil for the hand, so I went in back and added that. Oh, here I'm adding some more of that mesh. And as you can see, there's like a little bit of indentation of where the needle ends in each of those strokes. And the long ones took a whole lot more patience to make sure that they look solid. And this is where I wish I would have pulled out maybe a larger needle. I did have like a 49, but maybe a 27 would have been perfect for it. And then I went back just to try to, you know, even it out a little bit, blend it out. And I think I could have blended out some of those areas a little bit better, but then it would have added way more time to the tattoo, and I didn't want to do that. And again, so, well, I hadn't mentioned, but in this type of tattoo, the main focus that you want to spend the most time on is going to be the face. It's going to be the portrait. So for something like this, yes, add the details, add the cool highlights on the bottom and things like that. But don't make that the main focus, right? So you want to focus on the face and making sure that that looks perfect. I've seen it where some artists will probably, and I've done it in the past too, where you put too much focus on the clothing, the shirt, the hair, maybe they're wearing a necklace, something, and then when you finally get to the face, it's towards the middle top of the tattoo. Now you're tired, now you're rushing, and so you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you block in all these areas and make it look good as much as possible, and then move on, you know, so that way you can really focus on that face. Trying to find the right tone for that neck area was a little tricky, but I do think I was able to achieve it. I started dipping into my dark brown and my gray to really dull out those tones that were in the shadow. And then that yellowish sort of color that you see there, that was the golden yellow from Eternal. And so I was somewhere between that regular golden yellow and the one that I mixed with pink to create that peachy golden yellow. And those two main colors were most of the skin for Selena, most of the tattoo. And in some of the areas of the face, I didn't go right into black right away. Even though I saw it there, I didn't go right away because I wanted to create an undertone first and make sure I liked the shape and the way it was laying out first before I committed to a really dark color on the skin. Okay, here I started working on the lips. I wanted to kind of just lay down some of those main tones in the lips first. So I was somewhere between the tangerine and my the radiant reds that I had. And I didn't want to commit right to the dark right away, so I didn't do the dark right away. Then I started adding a little bit of dark tones, because the shape of those lips were so important to the photo, to the portrait. I wanted to make sure that I got some basic shapes down with my midtones, which would be those tangerines and the reds. And then I started going in with a black and burgundy and like a doled out red, you know, brown red, more of those deeper reds. So I didn't want to commit right away. And now I'm just kind of overlaying some of that sort of pink and tangerine and doing some blending, trying to find it, you know what I mean? I'm trying to figure out, looking at the photo, looking at the reference. And then because I'm wiping, I wanted to make sure not to lose the shape of the nose, so I'm adding some of those like under the nostrils, on the edge of the nose, to make sure I don't lose the shape of it, you know? And again, I noticed that I was starting to wipe away the fingers, so I wanted to run like a mid skin tone around it, because that can blend really easily. I didn't want to lose the ear in the background. I started kind of shaping that out a little bit. So that was my black that I used for the eyes as well, and my darkest blacks on the face was that same black that I was using on the bottom. I never once used a solid black in this tattoo until the very end, when I wanted to just darken some things up, because I didn't want to commit to the darkest tone. Because if you go ahead and throw that dark tone down, there's no coming back from it, you know what I mean? Like, if you end up regretting that it was too dark or something like that, you can't get it back after that. So, but I felt confident enough to, you know, mix in a black with some of the other tones to create the boldness that I needed in some areas. Here, I'm laying down some mid-tones so I don't lose the shape of the nose. And now I'm committing to the black over here. I think over here I did use some solid black, actually. And committing to the black. This is very much in a shadow part of the photo. You know, there's the hand kind of covering it. The hair obviously turns black as it's trying to fold behind the face. Those eyebrows, I used my round shader for that, and I was able to create the sort of eyebrow look that I was going for with some of those hairs. For the eye there, I made sure to add some line work so I don't lose the highlight. You want to make sure that always make sure you have space for the highlight. And I give it a little bit of extra space. I make the highlight a little bit bigger than what the photo looks like, so that way I don't end up making it too dark around it, and then I don't have space for the highlight anymore. Here I'm finally going into some of my midtones. Like I said, that was that golden yellow. The hand underneath is more in a shadow, so you don't see a lot of the pinkness of Selena like in some of the other areas. You see a lot more pink. So here I was adding that golden yellow first. And then once we get towards like the cheeks and some parts of the fingers, the light is hitting it directly. And so then you start to see a little bit more of the rosiness, sort of like the pink. Right there, I laid down some darker mid-tone brown over the area that I just did. This part is very warm, so I even go in with some oranges and a little bit of deep pink and tangerine. That's like a dark brown burgundy. I'm using my 11 curve mag and my 9 curve mag to get those shapes, mostly using pendulum motion. Right there, I'm working on some of the shadows that are on the photo on that left side of her face. Now I'm filling out some of the hair. And at this point, I really do feel a lot more confident with what I'm doing. Right now, I'm adding in the shape of the hair, kind of like the darkest part of the hair, making sure I leave space for the shine, the highlights where the light is bouncing off of the hair. And again, I haven't used a solid black yet. This black is mixed in with another burgundy color. I think I started dipping into more of a brown and a gray for this black, because there was a lot more brown and gray bouncing off of the skin, off of the hair in the photo. Really paying attention to those dark areas, making sure I add those. If I add those, then the rest comes easy. You know, the blending from there makes it so much easier. And from there, I have my darkest tone already on the skin. So then finding my next tone up is easier as well. Here I'm using sort of like a sickle shape movement, like these crescent movements with my mag to create that hair that's coming off of the cheek, off of the side of the head, up into the bun. Here I used a little bit of water to kind of dilute my black. It's almost like I'm using like a black and gray black now, like, because I want it to be a little see-through. I want skin tone. I'm gonna run skin tone through that hair because skin tone is showing through that hair, you know? And now I'm finally paying attention to that back area, back portion of the tattoo. I want to get the basic shapes. I want it to look right. I want to get the right tones, but I'm not being perfect. This is realism, not photorealism. I think for me, is a long way from getting to photorealism. Eventually, and then with it being an older photo, it is a lot harder to get everything perfectly exact. With more practice, I think I'll be able to get into photorealism finally. But for here, I'm just kind of matching what I see as much as possible. There's that burgundy that I was telling you about, just kind of laying that in. Some of the back portion of the hair, there's a tarp or a backdrop that she's standing in front of, so there's bouncing light coming off of it, and so it's not a solid black that you see, but rather like a rather the actual hair color, and that'll be the darkest tone. And then I started adding some of the black, and see how the black is on the bottom of the bun, and there was like a little bit of a purple sort of look there. Some browns. At this point, I've wiped away my whole stencil, but because I've laid down all of my dark tones, I don't really need my stencil anymore, so I can kind of just continue and keep tattooing and find those tones. Here I made a mixture of a gray with a blue. It's like a light blue. I really dulled out the blue with my gray. And this kind of gives us those highlights in the hair. And now I'm doing some blending. Whenever I see the skin start to turn really red, I leave it alone for a little while. Let it breathe, let it calm down, and then continue, you know? Yeah, because if you don't let the skin relax a little bit and you keep tattooing over it and you can't tell how the color is sitting because it looks so red, then you're running the risk of damaging the skin. And now in some of these areas that have been sitting for a while and I feel comfortable throwing my lightest tones on, I go ahead and throw that light sort of highlight tone. And I give it a second pass, dip into a little bit of white. Throwing in some mid-tones in the face, cross-hatching. Trying to make sure I focus on where the highlights are, where my lightest tones are, and where my mid-tones are. And at this point, I'm just committing to those midtones. I'm committing to them, you know, because then I can throw some white over the midtones and kind of brighten them up a little bit, or throw a little bit of a darker, deeper tone to bring down. Here I dipped into a little bit of that pink tangerine, and I'm just blending and kind of overlaying those colors, because the golden yellow is still there and the pink is there, so I want to make sure that both are visible. And it's so hard to see the colors at this point because they're warm colors, they're lighter tones, and the skin is red. At a certain point, I noticed that it's looking very flat. So then what I do is, for the golden yellow and the peachy color, I decide to dip into both of those and then dip into a little bit of red and orange, which makes that peachy color a lot more bold, a lot more bright. The phrase would be, it adds a little bit of chroma to it, so then it doesn't make the tattoo look flat anymore. You know, you can see those tones a little bit more. And right here I'm throwing in some of those light tones, and then you'll see that I'll throw in some of those oranges and that kind of stuff. Finishing out the hands, throwing in the light tone in the hand, on the fingers. Here, there's that deeper sort of color that I was talking about. Right there at the bridge of the nose, underneath the nose, by the lips, at the edges of the face, underneath the chin, by the lips. So that's that deeper sort of warm color that's deep within the skin that you can't tell right away, but that's what's going to help brighten up the tattoo and make the other colors, the light tones, really stand out. And through the hair, there's a skin tone that's happening, and there's like little straggly hairs that are kind of like overlaid over the skin as well. And at this point, I'm kind of focusing on white now. This is a mixed white. I mixed it with my lightest tone, and now I'm using a pure white. And then that's sort of like a dirty white that I'm mixing in, making sure to add the highlights in the hair. All right, these are the final highlights. I'm using a 7 liner to really highlight the lips, highlight the eyes, the top of the nose, the eyebrow. And then there was some areas that I noticed needed a little bit more of like a brighter feel to them, so I added that in. And the lips especially, really filled out those nails with white. Just adding the finishing touches now, you know? And I always give the tattoo a once over and kind of look at it and see if there's anything that I'm missing. Look at the photos, see if there's, you know, just anything little bit, you know? And I always do that. And I think we're here at the very end now. Hey, what's up, Ing fam? I'm here with the winner of the Selena portrait tattoo, Melissa. We just got done with the tattoo. Amazing. I'm so stoked with it. How do you feel about the tattoo?
It's beautiful.
Yeah?
That's all I can say.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you. I wanted to ask, you know, like, how was the experience? How did it go? Setting up the appointment and everything, and like coming
Everything was easy. You guys are so welcoming and loving. I mean, this is not like one stop you shop you go. This is like something you come back and keep coming. You know, he's got really that welcoming feel. It's amazing.
Thank you, thank you. And then, when's the last time you won something?
It's been a while, yeah. Especially something like this.
Yeah, I feel like I never win anything, and like.
Yeah. When you text me and it messaged me, I was like, no way! I literally was screaming in my bathroom like, ah!
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so happy you got it done. I'm glad that we were able to make this happen, and super excited to see the video and everything.
Thank you for doing stuff like this.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna hit you with a random bill now. No. It's legit. It's legit, guys. Yeah. Right. It's legit, guys. I do this kind of stuff especially because I don't get a lot of color tattoos, and this is the kind of work that I would want to do more of. And I'm so happy that there is people out there who are fans of, like Selena, who do want this kind of work, and it's so amazing how this all came together. So
it is. I mean, what you gonna say? Selena can still live on.
Yeah, exactly, right? Anything for Selena's.
That's right.
All right, guys, check out the tattoo. Anything for Selena!